Hello, everyone. Tony Warfield here. Ah, Today I want to talk about reparations. Now, this is one of those incendiary discussions that's going on in the country right now, and you got everybody that has their opinion about something, and no matter what the color of your skin, you have people on both sides or various sides of the issue. But I would want everyone to be able to appreciate how reparations would affect us as a community. And that's a conversation that really needs to be had, amongst our families, amongst our churches, our businesses, our communities. And without having those real discussions, I believe that reparations won't necessarily solve any problems because I think it's more deeply rooted than because we were slaves. I guess first thing I'd want to do is make sure everybody understands what reparations are. The dictionary defines reparation as the making of amends for a wrong one has done by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. The courts required a convicted offender to make financial reparation to his victim. Pretty simple. Reparations for slavery is a political justice concept that argues that reparations should be paid to the descendants of Africans trafficked to and enslaved in the Americas as a consequence of the Atlantic slave trade. The most notable demands for reparations have been made in the United Kingdom and here in the United States. The problem with that is focus. You can imagine there are a lot of movements going on out there, hundreds. I mean, it's possibly even more than that. And what happens is you have so many different movements going on that this country's sins end up being murky. The waters of the country's sins end up being murky because we're having our focus pulled away from us so much. We get distracted so easily as a community. And without that focus, it's really difficult for us to be able to urge our government or even ourselves to be able to get behind the idea of reparation. You can imagine with all the movements out there, you have movements like All Lives Matters or the feminist movements, gay movement, LGBT social movements, Me Too, pro-choice, even the Tea Party. There's hundreds more. But in that list I just showed you, how easy was it to overlook the Black Lives Matter movement? And that's what it's all about. The Black Lives Matter movement wasn't about only Black Lives Matter. It was about Black Lives Matter. It's you have so many black people being slain and it doesn't seem like anyone cares. And it's like, hey, we matter. So what happens is you end up getting the all lives matter, which basically washes away the focus or the intent or the purpose of Black Lives Matter. And without that focus, it just basically erases the whole premise of what Black Lives Matter is all about. So one of the reasons I would imagine you don't want people to focus on reparations is the price tag. Our current national deficit is approaching somewhere around $22 trillion dollars. And depending on how long this video stays on the internet, it's probably going to go above that. So the price tag for reparations has actually been calculated. It's amazing. $17 trillion dollars. 17 trillion. That's a lot of zeros. And we're talking about covering a black population of 42 million non-Hispanic, multiracial, and otherwise blacks. And that's according to the 2010 census. By the time the 2020 census comes out, that number could be significantly different. Now, here's the funny part about that. That number could be greater or lesser depending on so many different factors. How many of us have been slain, and how many of us have died, and how many births do we actually really have? But I guess one very important question I might have would be, who gets the reparations? Hold that thought for a second. So Congress.gov Back in 1989, a bill was proposed to study reparations, and that bill was just rebirthed this year 2019, HR 40, the Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act. This is by Representative Jackson Lee, Sheila Jackson Lee, a Democrat out of Texas no less. So that's significant. So I would definitely want you listening to look that up and read that in detail. But I wanted to go ahead and highlight one very important part of that. So HR 40, Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposal for African Americans Act. This bill establishes the Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans. The Commission shall examine slavery and discrimination in the colonies and the United States from 1619 to the present and recommend appropriate remedies. $17 trillion. Among other requirements, the Commission shall identify 1. The role of federal and state governments in supporting the institution of slavery. 2. Forms of discrimination in the public and private sectors against freed slaves and their descendants. And 3. Lingering negative effects of slavery on living African Americans in society. So we have people out there that are advocating for it, but with all the questions and concern about getting reparations, we have much louder voices, much stronger voices, much more powerful voices speaking against it. You know, you have your Senate leader, Mitch McConnell. Reparations aren't a good idea. Of course he's going to say that. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said he opposes paying reparations for slavery, arguing none of us currently living are responsible for what he called America's original sin. It's rare, but in this case, I agree with Mitch McConnell. No white person living today is responsible for the basically kidnapping of black people from the continent of Africa and distributing them throughout the world for indentured servitude. None of those people from 400 years ago is alive today. But so many of those people, the descendants of those people, benefit from that indentured servitude. You know, the power structure that we have in this country, the financial power structure in this country is immense, but we're not really even in a playing field when it comes to that. There's no shortage of graphs and pictures and studies that talk about how deficient we are when it comes to our position in this country versus the position of white people. You know, one article I found right here, Racism and Discrimination, the average black family would need 228 years to build the wealth of a white family today. Just as past public policies created the racial wealth gap, current policies widen it. So even though today's people are not responsible for yesterday's slavery, you're responsible for today's slavery, today's oppression. So one of the things that we can do to combat that, you might recall a post if you're on my Facebook page or anywhere on social media, you might recall a post I put out there talking about retraining our minds. As a community, we are slowly but surely becoming quote unquote woke, but it's still not at the pace that we need to do it to be able to handle $17 trillion infusion of cash. And that's something we definitely could use. So there are three issues that I have with reparations. And you're going to hear me say this again. I'm going to say it over and over again. I am not against reparations. I think we absolutely need it, but I think we need more than just reparations. So the three issues I have, Black Americans must better prioritize. Yeah, we really need help with that. Blacks must faithfully patronize Black businesses. Blacks must focus on financial enrichment through detailed financial education. This is our legacy, people. This will be our reparations. So let me ask you a question. So what are your priorities? Now, this is not me trying to get down on anybody or anything like that. Please, I done made a ton of mistakes. So I'm not casting stones or anything like that, but it's just an idea that I wanted to share. You have been working all year and have had no time off. You get a chance to go to your favorite location, let's say Las Vegas, one of my favorite places. At the same time, your current utility bill balances have grown to exceed any monthly payment an entire check can cover. That means it could be anywhere from $500 to $1,000, $2,000 for your utilities. So what do? Do you go to Vegas with the money that you have, or do you pay your utilities? Well, if you go to Vegas, you could win some money. Yet many, even should they win, they come home with nothing. They put the money right back into the slot machine or the roulette table or the craps table. And now when they had money when they went to Vegas, they come home with even less money coming back from Vegas. That is if they can make it back home from Vegas, because now they're broke. But when they get home, they come back to the lights out. The gas is off. Phone don't work. That's a reality. What's your priority? You want to be able to go out and have a good time. You deserve it. But at the same time, you also deserve to be able to make sure your food doesn't perish in your refrigerator because your power went out. And that's something you can handle if your priorities are straight. So we definitely need to prioritize our black businesses. A cash infusion would be most beneficial, a stimulus, if you would. One example of that is the Recovery Act was a stimulus package enacted by the 111th U.S. Congress and signed into law by President Barack Obama in February of 2009. Developed in response to the Great Depression, the ARRA's primary objective was to save existing jobs and create new ones as soon as possible. That stimulus worked. Yet in a community where our business dollars rarely stay within the community, would a stimulus benefit our businesses or raise the worth of other communities and businesses? Now, what do I mean by that? We seem to have this expectation for black businesses. We expect that our black businesses are perfect. We expect that the products and services that they provide are perfect, yet we don't want to pay for that perfection. We don't want to pay for that quality. We want to get a hookup. We want a discount. We want a price break. My cousin owns that business, so I'm not going to pay full price for that. Why should I pay full price for my cousin's business? You should pay full price because that's your cousin's business. Now, the funny thing about it is we have this expectation of quality for our businesses, but we don't want to pay for it. Yet we have this expectation for other communities' businesses or other cultures' businesses. We have this expectation for the white businesses, the Latin businesses, the Asian business. We expect to pay full price, even a premium, because we assume that because they're white, because they're Latin, because they're Asian, that the quality is there even when it's not. We're willing to pay for this illusion of quality because we deem their products and services as better than ours because they're not ours. That's that self-perpetuated hatred that's been in our community for too long. So without our black businesses, there's no way that we can support black dollars remaining in our community, helping our community to grow. So an infusion of cash into our community is not going to benefit us, not without education, not without the right mindset. So unification has to happen, whether it be social, it has to be social and financial, really. Every unified people within this country has a voice that politicians, like it or not, listen to. Why? Money and power. So they have their lawmakers, they have their law enforcers. If they're making the laws and they got the cops and everybody else enforcing them, the results is they create the rules, the system, if you would. And that system equals our oppression. And it continues to perpetuate every year. So going back to your Senate Majority Leader, yeah, you guys are not responsible for slavery 400 years ago, but you're responsible to slavery at present. So what is the answer? What is the cure? How do we fix it? Reparations is not enough. That's the real. Giving trillions of dollars to a community that covets new shoes, purses, cars, and chicken sandwiches to impress other broke people over real assets would be irresponsible. Without the financial education to support a windfall such as this, we release our oppressors from centuries of guilt and responsibility, whether they acknowledge it or not, while bolstering an economy that leaves our businesses with nothing. Imagine a culture that has the strength to endure hundreds of years of oppression only to be brought down by finally getting what we think we wanted or needed. A good example of this would be the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which opened the door to our community leaving itself to be seen in a better light by our oppressors. House versus field, I'm pretty sure you know what that means. Lack of unity resulting in further social challenges, including drugs, mass incarceration, what a business that is, and sadly, continuing the breakup of the black family, pitting the black woman against the black man. So I guess my plea or my desire would be for us to have a real conversation about how reparations would benefit us and how we can get those reparations. Now, do I think reparations will help us make up the wealth gap in this country? Not a chance. But what it would do is give us a chance to continue as a community and continue to grow as a community. Money plus financial knowledge equals economic empowerment. We would be able to get our own politicians, help to enact laws that will protect our communities rather than further oppress us. This is not a case against reparations, as I stated. Quite the opposite. Our community needs and deserves the money, but true reparations comes from not only gaining the knowledge, but the knowledge of how to grow it, protect it, and provide it to generations that follow. Our legacy. Those are my thoughts. Thank you so much for your time.